let's move along to something you have recently. What, blue chip ratio?
Okay.
Give me a little details on this.
So I think when someone thinks a blue chip recruit, you're thinking, oh, that 5-star guy. So the blue chip ratio is the amount of 4 and 5 stars you have for your class. So if you sign 20 overall players and 17 of them are ranked a 4 or 5 star, then your blue chip ratio is 85%. So that's really all that is. So Notre Dame's blue chip ratio for the 2023 recruiting class was 79%. They signed 24 high school recruits, and 79% of them were 4 and 5 star players. And that was, I think, of the top 10 schools nationally, like of the top 10 where they ended up ranking in the 23 class per the On3 consensus rankings, it was they had the 4th best blue chip ratio. So that's really all it is. And it really is just a way, Darren, to look at how deep your class is. So so you're looking at the 4 and 5 stars, but really what you're doing is how many 3 stars do you have? Like how many of the low ranked guys? That, to me, that's what this points out. So only having 21% of your class is ranked as 3-star, that's a pretty good number. You compare that to 2022, Notre Dame 77%. That's strong. Off to a really good start in 2024 class with 88%. If you look back at the 2021 class when Notre Dame signed 27 players, blue chip ratio of 48%, Darren. That's a really low number. So you want it to be above 70% for the Fighting Irish because you're signing just a higher quality of player, less projects. Typically your 3-star guys in Notre Dame are going to sign, and I'm speaking very generally here, are going to be more of projects, boomer bust type talent. So yeah, you like to see the higher blue chip ratio because you're raising the floor of your recruiting class. Maybe not the ceiling, because not all 4 and 5 stars are rated equal. You can have the number 1 overall player in the country or the number 350 overall player in the country kind of lumped together there because they're both a 4 or 5 star. But for me, and looking at the blue chip ratio, it's more about how many 3 stars are you signing, or should I say the lack of 3-star players that you're signing.
Mike, I want to talk about the city of Chicago for
Yeah.
a second. Let me give you my perspective as a non-recruiting analyst, and then you can rip it to shreds and take it from there. But it seemed like the last few years under Brian Kelly that the city of Chicago is important to Notre Dame, but it wasn't maybe emphasized as much as previous head coaches since I've been here in town. Now, if there's a great player, of course, they're going to go after him. But it felt like there was a lot of emphasis on Georgia, Florida, Texas, which is smart, don't get me wrong. Are we starting to see Notre Dame jump back more into the city of Chicago? Because you think about Iowa and Wisconsin, the success they've had. They live in the city of Chicago. I know Brett Bielema at Illinois is trying to get back into Chicago. I'm just curious, am I way off base? And do you feel like Marcus Freeman is more involved in Chicago than we've seen the last few years? So rip me to shreds.
No ripping to shreds.
No?
Is that better content?
Hey, it makes for good radio. Come on.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you, Darren. I think about this and just kind of my experience covering Notre Dame football recruiting. They're kind of like Chicago. They recruit the same as Chicago they do Dallas or Atlanta. It's Notre Dame. They're really everywhere. So they're recruiting Chicago, but it's not like they're recruiting it super hard and their main focus is Chicago, or it's not like they're just slacking off in Chicago and ignoring Chicago. They're just recruiting it as normal. So Reese was leading Notre Dame's recruiting efforts in Chicago. He would do most of the what we call area recruiting, right? So someone like Jared Parker, Notre Dame's new offensive coordinator, his areas were Nashville. He did all the state of Tennessee. He dabbled in Atlanta a little bit, but did South Carolina, North Carolina. That was more of his area recruiting. Of course, you're going to go recruit your tight ends specifically. And for Tommy Reese, he was recruiting his quarterbacks. But how many of your quarterbacks is he going to recruit? He's got his 2024 guy. Of course, you're going to look at different 2025s. But when you're not doing that, again, this spring evaluation period from mid-April to end of May is 6 weeks. I mean, how many quarterbacks can you see in that period? So when you're not doing that, you're recruiting your areas. And for Reese, it was Chicago. His returns on Chicago are kind of up for debate. A lot of people I talked to weren't I haven't been too thrilled with him. So you have Gino Gaduli, the new quarterbacks coach. It's yet to be announced as officially hired, but it's just a matter of time here. But he's taking over in Chicago. He's already got a good relationship with Cam Williams, who's Notre Dame's receiver commit in 2024. I think that's a nice little bonus here. But yeah, I don't really have strong opinions here, Darren. They're just active in it as if it's any other top area in the country. It's just kind of easier for them to recruit there because it is local.
You could almost say that Notre Dame is recruiting so well from coast to coast, they don't have to emphasize an area maybe compared to the coaching staff 15 years ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's not like, oh, if we don't, crush Chicago, we're going to fall apart of the program. So I don't know, like I'm probably taking some people off from Chicago, but like it's an area that they're obviously diving deep into, but the success of the program is not going to be dependent on them recruiting in any specific area. Like if they don't kill it in Chicago, I mean they haven't, and they've been doing pretty well. And I don't know if like signing all the kids from Chicago is going to win them national championship in 2024. So I would like them to sign more players from Chicago, but they just had a really good run in Texas, and they signed the most kids in Texas this past cycle than they've signed in the internet era, and that's even without Peyton Bowen. Try not to say his name on too many of these shows, but I just let that slip. But yeah, you want Notre Dame to be crushing it in Texas too because of the talent there. So I like Georgia. You mentioned Notre Dame's not been killing it in Georgia lately. They were, 2019, 2021, signing a bunch of guys from Georgia. They're not really doing that anymore. It's cyclical in that, all right, this is a big area for Notre Dame. This is a big area. And why? It's because Notre Dame's going where the talent is.
Yeah.
And that's kind of it at the end of the day.
Is there a good crop of Chicago kids in 2024?
Yeah, I mentioned Cam Williams, number 30 overall player nationally, number 6 receiver, committed to Notre Dame last summer, and on three's rankings have him number 20 overall, number 5 receiver, just slightly higher. Absolutely love him. Put on a show at Irish Invasion last year. And of course, Justin Scott, who we probably mentioned more than anybody, on our show, Darren, number 20 overall player per the consensus, number 3 defensive lineman. On three loves him as well. So those are kind of the two big names for Notre Dame. Justin Scott, I put in a prediction for the Irish to land him last summer. And then I didn't love it in the fall, and then I loved it in January because he was going to commit to Notre Dame by all accounts at the end of January on his birthday, and then he pushes his date back, and he's going to visit Georgia, and I don't know, Darren's kind of all over the place. So I definitely would not say he's a major Notre Dame lean at this point. It's kind of up for grabs. Notre Dame is still working on him. And then a couple players of note, Darion Dupree from Mount Carmel, 3-star prospect, but someone who we really liked when we got to see him camp at Notre Dame last June. Thought he was an outstanding running back. The Irish offered him in January, and he'll be one to keep an eye on as a potential second back. And Marquise Lightfoot from Kenwood Academy, 4-star player. Darren, it's hard for me to say with a ton of certainty, like anything on the defensive line board, other than I think Bryce Young is trending pretty strongly towards Notre Dame. It's the son of Bryant Young. He's down in Charlotte, and Notre Dame has Owen Wayfield committed an interior defensive line. But other than that, like, I don't know if Notre Dame's going to land Marquise Lightfoot or the other 50 defensive linemen they're after right now. The defensive line board is just so massive right now that, Lightfoot coming off the edge, like, just how does he stack up on the board? I don't have a strong sense of it right now, but Notre Dame offered him, I want to say it was last April. So he's been a player on the board for quite some time. And he's been to Notre Dame 4 times in total. So definitely a player who the staff's familiar with. And yeah, all 4 of these guys, I wouldn't be stunned if Notre Dame ends up with all 4. That parlay probably doesn't happen, but Notre Dame's definitely a good position with all of them.